Good afternoon to just about everybody. The folks probably way out on the West Coast are still morning, but hi everybody. If you're here today, you're probably here to be involved in the shop talk with Preservica using M365 for electronic records transfers to enable closer engagement with agencies and senior IT leadership. So let's jump right in. And here is the agenda for today. Do a quick welcome, we'll give a presentation, we'll have Q&A, and then CoSA will have some announcements. Any questions on that? Hello, Oklahoma. Okay. Obviously, if people want to put any questions in the chat, they can feel free to do so. And we'll be monitoring the chat. So this is me, Mike Davis. I'm a solutions architect here at Preservica, and this is the topic that we just said we were going to cover. So let's get right into it. So we want to start by saying, we really appreciate the relationship that we have with us and CoSA. We've been involved with CoSA since 2015. We've been involved specifically with the SERI initiative, the State Electronic Records Initiative, for some time. We have 27 state archives. Florida was the most recent to join, and I think hopefully Oklahoma will be next on the list. And we've been, as I said, proud to be involved since 2015. We are excited to be invited to the annual meeting, and we are particularly happy to be involved in the affinity group discussions. And here we want to talk about some of those discussions and why we chose this topic that came out of it. So in fact, these were the three areas that we sat in on and collected feedback on. We heard a lot in the electronic records transfer conversation, and you folks talked about people and process and technology. And, we certainly listened and took a lot of notes on email archiving and AI. We wanted to focus in on the Microsoft and transfer specifically because we know that you folks are going to be releasing some backer guidance from SERI soon. We also have a AI special interest group already that if you're a member of the Preservica family, you already have the opportunity to be part of that. So we really wanted to make sure we dove in today and talked specifically about how, being a part of the Microsoft 365 world can actually be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Okay, so while we were sitting in those sessions, we heard you folks talk a lot about challenges from working with agencies. And I'm sure most of you folks none of this is going to be particularly surprising to any of you, because these are things we've heard not only from the annual meeting, but we've heard when we've been talking to each of you folks about your challenges, right? The challenge of how content gets to you, whether it's dropped off in media, removable media, hard drives, etc. Whether or not you even get content, what format you get, whether you get the right content, and then what are the processes and how do you get IT at the various different departments to be part of the solution. And so that's where we're going to dive in and talk about, again, how can M365 be part of that solution? So here's where, we see this challenge you folks have. You've got each of these various different agencies. You've got the leadership at the state level, and then you have each of you in the archives. And in the middle, you have Microsoft 365. Particularly, most of your agencies are using it. So how do we bridge that gap? Well, there are certainly some benefits to Microsoft 365, right? One of the things about 365 is that there are components within Microsoft 365 that make it straightforward and easy for, just make this clear, for records to be transferred easily with just a few clicks or even no clicks at all in automation. We're going to talk about some of those tools that are available within SharePoint and within the M365 environment. And what's great about that is that if you're using M365 and you do it that way, then Preserve 365 is a way that you can also move the content and have those agencies getting content submitted to you along with metadata, but also then maintaining their ability to search and find that content. And of course, one of the key things we want to do is make sure that once records are transferred to your environment and to your archives, that they'll continue to be readable and trustworthy. And that's the whole reason why, we were asked to go about going and making embedded preservation part of the M365 environment. So I know a lot of you have probably seen M365's, the Preservica solution, and you know that active digital preservation being brought to the Microsoft environment for your agencies is really important to allow you that long-term readability and trustworthiness. And it really does allow that seamlessness from the SharePoint experience for those agencies that want to be able to still find those records within SharePoint. But again, now we're going to focus entirely on why this is going to help you with that transfer piece of getting content out of the agency and over into the archives. All right, so let's talk about the steps, right? And these are the things that you folks have been looking for to have a better relationship with those agencies, right? And that is, how can I automate the process of getting content out of those agencies, and particularly out of their M365 environment, their SharePoint environment, their Teams, et cetera? How can I then automatically make sure that the content is going to be preserved, but most importantly, in line with my policies, i.e., if my retention schedules are 15 years, 25 years, 50 years, whatever, how do I make sure those are going to be aligned with all of the work we've worked so hard to get those retention policies in place? How can we quickly make sure we're going to apply the metadata that we need? How are we going to get the metadata that was already created by the agency in SharePoint, in M365? And then the last piece is, for the circumstances and the pieces of the content that we do need to get out to the citizens, how is it that we can then make that available for citizen self-service? And again, this is exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. So what have we learned when we've been working with some of our customers as we've been looking at the process of trying to do this agency transfer? And these are some of those real pragmatic things that we've learned that we're going to encourage people to sort of understand and approach, right? So one of the first things we've learned is that as you work through this process, it's really important that you build that 365 records governance team as early as possible. And that really is involving not only your records team, but also the IT leadership team within your organization. And that's going to allow you to start getting that buy-in at the state level that will drive that adoption. The second thing clear is it's really important to be able to work to understand and how to articulate that, by delivering this, you're not just taking care of the needs of the archive, but you're also bringing, as you can see here, better compliance, efficiency, and security to the organization, to the entire state. One of the key things we've heard a few times here is it's really valuable to identify a quick win, whether that's with a particular type of document or with an agency where there's a level of pain where working together can get you that quick win. And we know you folks have been working really, really hard on your retention schedules. And in a lot of cases, your retention schedules are really in great shape for the physical side. And so working on and building those retention schedules for those born digital or digitized assets means you don't actually have to have 100% of that structure in place to start getting some quick wins and making progress. And then another key piece here is understanding that as you're positioning to the agency and the IT leadership, that these technologies are here to automate the process, It's going to allow you to make life easier for the agencies and, of course, make life easier for the IT leadership. Naturally, of course, it's actually going to make life easier for you as well. So that boils down to really, how do we help you put the message in place to the agencies and to the IT leadership team, as well as to your own group, as to where the value comes in. So when you're talking to the various different agencies, how do you help them understand that, leveraging their investment in Microsoft 365 is going to be in their best interest in terms of compliance, efficiency, and security? Right? One of the key things we've seen here is that as long as they can continue to work with SharePoint as their main interface, excuse me, i.e., it's the way that they can transfer the records and it's the way they can find the records, that's going to minimize the impact on the way that they're going to work. And again, automation, automation, automation. The more automation you can do, the less of a burden it is on the agency. And so they'll be ecstatic to see that. And of course, if they need the records, they're not locked away someplace in an archive that they're inaccessible. They don't need to interact with IT to get them back. They're going to be there. And at the end of the day, knowing that those records are not only going to be there, but they're going to be accessible for years to come. So what's in it for IT leadership in the state? Well, the last item here is really the most important item, right? Because they're always looking to accelerate the process of eliminating legacy systems, right? So to the extent that you can help them retire legacy systems by consolidating around whatever the systems are, ideally, things like SharePoint, it really helps them reduce risk and reduce the sprawl of these various legacy systems. Now, reducing sprawl is also something that they're going to look to do pre-pandemic or through the pandemic. We've seen in many of the agencies that you talk to and across the IT infrastructure that there are hundreds or even thousands of SharePoint sites. And helping IT leadership understand that this is going to be a tool that's going to make it easy for them to consolidate those will certainly be something that they will find attractive. And of course, automation, automation, automation. If they can get secure transfer and they know that it'll be direct to the archives, that's going to make their worry about risk go down. And of course, as long as it's going to minimize the burden on their team, they're going to be happy and drive down costs. So what's in it for you folks? Well, predictability, actually getting records in some predictable way, in eliminating things like those physical media, having hard drives or thumb drives show up at your desk when you least expect it. Getting an audit trail and being able to have that chain of custody that you're looking for. And again, automation, right? And lastly, being able to make that on behalf of the other organizations there, being able to get content available for self-service for citizens. Does that make sense? Is there any questions? I can't see the chat right now, but I just want to make sure people understand that, trying to get that quick win either for that agency or for that IT leadership is really going to be about identifying a use case or two that falls within this space that's going to, drive one of these important use cases for them. Cool. All right. So when we said, how can we do this? I'm going to show you in a quick little demo here how easy you can just help an agency identify content that they have within their SharePoint site and then move it manually. But as we said, automation, automation, automation. So at scale, there are a couple of different tools that exist within the 365 framework that are really valuable. Now, the two tools that we've articulated here are very different, right? The Purview tool is a very IT-centric tool. So think of it as a back-end tool. And within that, there's a lot of things that Purview can do, right? Purview is great for data classification. It's got content for e-discovery. And there's a records management feature within Purview. Purview, again, falls within the realm of IT. So if IT is willing to partner with you and use Purview, it can be really valuable to you and to them. We are finding in some of the agencies that we're talking to and some of the state archives that IT doesn't feel as comfortable about working with the records retention and records management, function of Purview. And so in those states, we find that Power Automate is another valuable tool. And even in those places where Purview is a good tool, Power Automate is still also a really valuable tool. So if you don't know what Power Automate is the ability to build workflows within the M365 environment that will do things like walk documents or assets through a process of approval and set that final step as moving or archiving to the, moving or copying to the archive. It can be triggered by a particular change in the metadata or by documents falling into a folder. There are multiple workflows that Power Automate can deliver. And again, one of the key things is that it will end up by automatically moving or copying files to the archive and then doing things like sending an email notification summarizing the move or the copy. So let's show you first from the agency side how easy it is to start identifying documents, assets that could be easily moved off to the archive. Then we're going to go show you how that process that we just showed you, that multi-step process of first transferring, then reviewing, enriching, and then ultimately making accessible, how that's going to work. So I'm going to jump in. And here's the first step. So here we have this is your state transportation authority. We have users here. They think, okay, let's start identifying some documents that we think are time to move over to the archives. So they start poking around and they're looking for documents. And rather than just dumping them onto a thumb drive or a hard drive, they start looking around and they say, okay, what about in our public meetings? Let's go into safety here. And actually, they probably think the entire folder probably can go. So they look around, they see, here's some files in here. And they could just tag this and move or copy it. And in this case, they're going to just say, okay, I'm going to move the entire thing to a folder, and I'm going to set that folder for records review. So they could move, they could copy. In this case, we did a copy. It could just as easily have been a move. And now somebody within their organization can go review. Okay, these are the records that have been set to be reviewed. We got a chat. Let me go see what we've got in our chat. Sorry, Cassie, I apologize if it's a little fuzzy. So you can see here now that the folder has been moved over here, and now we're going to very quickly just go in and we're going to make sure that the metadata needed to justify the move continues. I don't know why it stopped. Hang on. I'm glad it's better. And hang on. Let's try that again. Okay, so let's take us to about where we just were. You've already seen the move. Move forward a little bit more. And within safety, now you're going to be able to see how easy it is to go in and change. There we go. So now let's enrich this with some metadata. So we're going to look at these documents. We're going to choose exactly what we want to assign this metadata to, and we want to make sure this metadata is going to travel over to the archives. So here we're going to go in, we're going to put the date of the review. We're going to put who reviewed it, any other information we want to put in here. Now, I highlighted over the label there because if we were going to do automation, all I would have to do is assign a label there and it would immediately start moving those. But for this first step, we're just going to show manual. So you can see now we've added the reviewer, we've added the review date to those assets. And now we're going to go through the process of just manually moving these off to the archive. I'm going to choose archive. And we're going to choose move. In fact, we're going to send the whole folder off. So archive, choose move, and the whole folder gets sent off. So you'll see it start to move the whole folder. And now let's jump to the next. Okay, so here we're now in the archive side, and that's automatically moved data to the holding area. So now you can see that we're in the holding area. And we can see from within the holding area that this has come down. We can see which agency it sent it, and we can see the hierarchy of where this came from. So we can drill in. We can see that it came from the folder safety. We can see the assets. We can immediately go look at them. It's been virus checked. It's been fixity checked. We can see the security has been set so that it's specifically restricted to that area. So only those users in the archive who have access to it. And now we're going to take these assets and we're immediately going to go move them to a public safety folder. So drag and move them. You can see how quickly and easily that is. And so now somebody in the archives team who's enabled to do this can come in here and now they can do the enrichment, right? Now that it's been put in the right place, somebody who's enabled to do the metadata enrichment. Now all the Preserve 365 data, all that Microsoft data is still there, but now you're going to want to make this accessible for public access. So here you're going to choose one of those metadata templates. Now, because this is not a birth record or a death record or one of those, we're just going to use DC. We could have used a meeting record one template, but here, just for making life easy, we've got this one. So here we're going to put some information about making it easy to find this, the subject, the date, maybe the type of meeting. And that's going to make it so that when we do make this accessible, it'll be easier to find. So we very quickly do this now. Of course, most of you know it's quite easy to do bulk metadata editing as well. Let's go look at the other one real quick. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to make these accessible by changing the security tag from that controlled one to public. And now we're going to be ready to move those into a folder where they're going to be accessible. So now we've taken them, we've put them in a place where they can now be made accessible. Now we're going to drag them into an actual folder where we can make them viewable for the public. We're going to put them into a public meetings folder here for whatever this agency is. And it immediately, as you can see, will audit so that you can go ahead and move this from within the archives. Now, if we go over and we look at the public portal, just to show you that it's moved with all the rest of those public documents, you can see them there in the top two. Up there. It's now been set to public, and that means if we go right into the portal, We can immediately navigate to that organizational hierarchy. And if we had just wanted to, we could have gone right up here into the search and started typing green line and immediately would have come back. But for somebody who wants to browse, they can also start browsing those public meetings, or now they start saying, okay, now that I'm within this state agency, I'm going to start looking for green. And it immediately brings up all the files that are there. Here's our speed monitoring document. We can bring it up and it's immediately going to be accessible. We can see whatever metadata we've added, and that file can be downloaded if necessary with this button right here. Okay. So one of the things that's really important here is to understand that we're working very hard to make sure that the learnings that we're seeing from this are shared and move forward. And we'd love to have additional folks working with us to help do this. And so if you're interested in being a part of a state archives working group on records transfer involving M365, we'd love to have you join. And so we've got this QR code here. And so feel free to, point your iPhone or your Android camera at this and let us know that you'd like to be a part of the State Archives Working Group for records transfer for M365. And we'd be happy to start facilitating that. And with that, we wanted to be very clear and concise and give people the time back. So what questions do you have from this presentation? And Becky, I'll let you ask any questions or handle the questions.
Mike, we do have one question.
Great, thanks, Lisa.
The question we have that I've seen so far is, how can Preservica assist us with the challenges we talked about in getting records transferred from other agencies?
Excellent question. Yeah, so one of the big things that we're trying to do is make sure that we give you a standard set of best practices to get those transferred agencies. Obviously, if they're an M365 shop, you can see that it can be as easy as possible. But even if it's not an M365 shop, we have implemented a number of different ingest mechanisms so that you can have standard mechanisms and standard approaches. And we hope that that's going to enable you folks to ease the burden on your training of those agencies and making it more consistent and just plain easier so that you can get, again, the agencies that you need to get your content to you in a faster, more predictable way. And as I said, automation as much as possible.
Great.
So
thank you for that.
Thanks, Lisa. Great question.
I don't see any others right now, though, Mike. I guess they're just thinking about what you shared. I mean, that's kind of it's a whole nother thing when you have to think about what can you say that'll make it effective for your IT and your other leadership.
Yeah, so I think if people remember nothing else, it's start early, engage your stakeholders, and remember it's all about them, right? So how can you deliver to the IT organization in a way that's going to be effective to them so that they'll be more willing to be the champions that you're looking for them to be?
Great. Thank you for
Great.
that. Do we have any other comments, questions from anyone? Mike, do you have anything else?
No, I think we're good. So, I mean, I know you guys have some announcements you guys wanted to cover. Do you want us to hang around? Did you guys want us to drop off and let you handle your announcements? Let us know what you want us to do.
You're welcome to hang around. It won't take but a minute. Becky, are you the one sharing the slides, or who is sharing?
Mike was sharing the slides during his presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think we'll just discuss them. We won't show them right here.
I got it. I can go back to sharing
Okay.
again. Sorry.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so we thank you guys for attending and for your input on all of this. And just to remind you that we have other webinars. We have one next week. It's our State Archive Showcase. So we hope you'll join us for our CoSA member webinar next week as well. We also have another SERI webinar this year. We're looking at the Backer grant, kind of some final notes and kind of where it's going to go from here. So put November 12th on your calendar. Go ahead and pass that one. There's lots of ways, as always, to contact us in CoSA. So we thank you and use any and all of them to stay in touch. And we'd like to thank Preservica today for being our Shop Talk sponsor and for sharing this information. There will be a short webinar evaluation afterwards. It really does help us as we plan these programs and give us ideas on things that you're interested in. And so we appreciate all of that support. So thank you to Mike and Kim and Krista and the entire Preservica team for being with us today and sharing it. I hope we'll see you at the next Shop Talk. Take care, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, folks.